You know, it's almost like your birthday with a package from China, so let's go. So with the previous version, like, it was a kind of weird situation that we have like a system inside the box, and kind of weird was like also when you're looking at the chip and the specs, it doesn't make any sense. Of course, with the typical, let's say, system, we're also going to get ourselves like a little bit better quality, the PlayStation 2 knockoff 2.4 GHz controllers. I must say, in overall, the controllers are not bad at all. This time we do have like an okay D-pad, and we do have like rubberized joysticks over here. So when it comes to the joysticks, I really like it. But this is what we're going to get in the second box. A power supply, HDMI cable, USB hub, and the remote, because this thing is actually an Android box. So if you're going to remove the SD card, and the SD card is over here, you will boot up into Android 9.0. And over when you're going to take a close look at the Android box itself, it also says over here like we're going to get Android 9.0 and Emulation 4.5. Emulation can just basically download it, and you can basically like download for free and put it on Android box. So take consideration, that is something you can do yourself. Then we like the Super Console X2 Pro manual, and have the explanation how you need to add your files and all the other mumbo jumbo. Basically like a lot of tutorials on the web where you can check it out also, but also this manual is very extended. I must say, give them extra kudos for that. And then we're going to get ourselves like a cheap 4GB SD card, and what I understand of here, we do have like some video files, also explanation tutorials how everything works. But let's talk about the X2 Pro Edition, because this is not the same product that we have seen before. So when you're looking at the older model over here, you do see like the case is completely different, but also the connections do have like some minor differences. And also when you're going to put them side by side, the Pro version is way bigger. So at the side, we're going to get ourselves the micro SD slot and 2 USB ports. So with the normal version, we don't have a micro USB port at all. We're only having like 2 USB connections. The connections at the back are basically the same, only in a different position. So when you're looking at the new version, we do have like an AV out, HDMI, LAN function, a 12 volt 1 amp like input, and of course the on and off switch. And the on and off switch, that is not something really new. With the first model, like the first really super consoles, we also have like an on and off switch, but the on and off switch is a little bit of a problem in general when it comes to Android boxes. I think it's very cool to have one. The conclusion is the X2 Pro is absolutely like great, like it's way better than the normal version, and particularly when looking at the housing itself, it's a little bit bigger, but also when you're looking at like the micro SD card that's inside the machine, I found it a little bit of annoying that you need to use a card reader with the old version. Nevertheless, like, let's take a close look at this thing and just, what are we going to get? But let's take a close look at the menu itself. I must say, I really like this new layout. I think this was in the UI. I think the UI is like the Emulation new or something like that it's called. Nevertheless, we have like all kinds of different like categories. Like also implemented a lot of old school stuff. Think about Commodore 64, the MSX, but also Amiga, PC Engine. But the thing is, like, when it comes to these systems, take consideration we do have some limitation, because these things will have, for example, N64, but we will have problems with some emulation. I've noticed also with 3DO, we do have like some mixed, let's say, performance. And that is a little bit of a bummer with these things. We do have limitations, especially when it comes to the specifications. But let's take a close look at some high-end stuff and also some two-dimensional stuff, and I'll show you what I mean with it, what you're going to get. But let's go into the menu, because we can basically like switch out a lot of things if you have problems. So with the menu, here we like game settings. Here we can basically like set the aspect ratio. You can mess around with bezels. So here we like even the option to make an auto save and load function. So you would like just look around with it. Like the UI can be set, like here we have the new Emulation. This is the new theme. I personally really like it. So here we can switch out a lot of stuff with the UI, sound settings, controllers. If you need to like controller mapping, if you have problems with this, you can go in here and mess around with it. I'm not going to do it now. There's like tutorials out there that have like completely like explanation how you need to do it. But there is so much stuff you can switch out with Emulation in general. Okay, so when it comes to MAME, we do have like a lot of stuff you can play. Of course, Kill Instinct doesn't run on this box, so that's a little bit unfortunate. Another thing they accidentally, I think, messed up. When pressing start, we're going to have like player 2 and player 1 set to the same controller. That's unfortunately the same issue we had with the previous, like say, box. So that's something you should fix in the RetroArch itself, or reconfigure the controls. So it is a little bit of a bummer, something like it happens, but we can control 2 characters at the same time. It's kind of funny, to be honest. Pressing the both joystick will give you like the option to make a quick load, quick save with MAME. So that is something you can do, or just go out of it, or pressing select to start and reset the system. But if you're going to be implementing, let's say, new options, you can go to the advanced option by holding the A for a couple of seconds. Over here, what you basically can do is like switch out the emulator. So let's say we're going to the MAME 2010 if you're having problems. Then we have like aspect ratio can be configured, core provided, or full or square pixel 1:1. Like there are like all of kinds of options they can implement in here. Unfortunate, like we did notice like we have some issues with the like widescreen. So what you can do, for example, we can mess around with it so much. For example, like implement bezels and mess around with the, let's say, configuration of the emulator, just to see if we can get a little bit better performance, and also the two-player option problem. Alright, so next up, let's try the same game again, and we did try to mess around with the emulator, and it seems to be working for the bezels. And also, we don't have the issues anymore with the controller. I think the main problem we had with this is because we're having the different emulator, because we have like one dongle for basically two wireless controllers, and some emulators cannot really handle it. So when pressing start on one player, it basically shows both players. So it's more like a problem with the controls that we're using in combination with the emulator. And of course this looks so much better when we have bezels enabled with the MAME emulator 2010. Let's try a little bit of GoldenEye. And yeah, this is a game and also a system that doesn't run great on these boxes. You can see like we do have like a shitload of glitches. Maybe we can fix it. So for once, I must say that it seems to be that they didn't mess it up with the controller like the previous time. But the overall performance, we have some minor hiccups. We can mess around with the emulator if you want to get some better performance. The same thing that I shown you before with MAME. But again, like I would not expect to have like way better performance in general when it comes to this. Maybe less glitching. Maybe most of the time we have less performance and less FPS. Another thing I wanted to show you, pressing both joysticks at the same time, we do have like the option to mess around with RetroArch. So it's basically like a quick way to get into this. So here we can do like a lot of cool things. Sometimes even like making quick load, quick save. But just here we can also close the content and just go back to the main menu. Yeah. Alright, so next up let's try a little bit of a Thomas Wave, a system that will have sometimes little hiccups here and there. But with the box of this, even despite the power that it has, we do have the option to play a couple of these games. Let's get into the hard part. Let's see how it emulates, how it keeps up. With the cheap S905 box, we always have problems, but with the S905, like the better boxes, we do have like way better performance, what you can see over here. Do have like some minor dips, but nothing like really to worry about. Alright, so let's take a close look at Sega Saturn, and I must say that Saturn is a quite freaking miracle in my opinion that it works actually on the box like this. The overall performance is pretty damn good, but take consideration like games like Panzer the Dragoon will not run perfectly, or better said, it run most of the time pretty damn shitty. We need to have just more power, so it's more like a mix, like with N64. Some games run okay, some games will run absolutely horrible. And with this Super Speedway, weird looking Wipeout rip-off, I personally really hate this game. So next up, let's try some Sega Dreamcast gaming, and I must say when you're looking at the FPS, you can see it dipping to 40 sometimes, but in my opinion, it doesn't really bother me. Now you can see the numbers, then you will notice it, but when you're actually playing it, I don't really notice it at all. But it will like a great indication that the system combination with the Flycast emulator is not a great fit on this chipset. But again, most of the Dreamcast game will be playable. Even sync correctly with the GPU. By getting into the IDA64, it shows the S905X2. So also it's kind of weird because most of the box is running on X3 nowadays. So when you're looking at overall specifications, 2 GB of RAM, so they didn't lie about that. The CPU is an ARM Cortex A53 1800 MHz, it's a quad core. So it has like 4 CPU cores. Let's check the display. We're having a Mali G31 on here. So the GPU is a little bit better than, let's say, the first generation Super Constellix. Then we have Android 9 over here. And it is rooted, already mentioned, so we cannot watch Netflix, Full HD and 4K. And of course the thermals. I must say, like when you're looking at thermals, it's not bad at all. It's getting some good performance. Way better than the first generation. But when you're looking at these devices, it's more of the same. So when you're just tuning in, this is maybe something exciting and something new. And when you're looking into the jungle of game boxes, it's absolutely more the same stuff. The X2 Pro, there is in my opinion nothing really pro about it. We have a different case, and of course we have now finally like the option to have like a micro SD put in the system. But beside that, like there's not a lot of an improvement. I want to thank you for watching. Consider subscribing. Let me know in the comments what you think of this, and it would be great to see you in the next video.